We begin today's class with the Pranam Mantra. Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grinanti Ye Bhurida Janaha. So we continue from where we left last time. You all remember Vijay Krishna Goswami sought permission from Sri Ramakrishna to complete the formal Brahmo worship, and after that everybody was given a sweet, and Benipal had arranged a nice feast for all those who had gathered there for the festival. And as we saw, Sri Ramakrishna was like a magnet, and everybody was eagerly listening to what he was saying. But since it was also an occasion where a formal Brahmo meeting, the formalities had to be done, and Vijay was a little hesitant to speak in front of such a great personality, Sri Ramakrishna, whom he revered very much. So he sought his permission, and finally Sri Ramakrishna asked him to complete the formalities, and they did the worship, the formal worship which the Brahmos did. And they, after the feast, after the meal, everybody prepares to return home. Many of them were not, though they were keen to continue, but they had to go home. But except for a few, Vijay Krishna Goswami and M, who is the recorder of the gospel, who has recorded all these conversations, they still are with Sri Ramakrishna, and the conversation goes on. So this chapter is the topic given by M. Though the conversation is continuing, there was a break for meals, and after that, Mother, Kali and Brahman are one, when one gains the highest knowledge. So when one gains the highest knowledge, you don't see any distinction between Brahman and Mother Kali. Now this was a new concept, because India was fully divided, Hinduism was divided into a lot of sects. Either you believe in a God with form, or a God without form, God as a father or God as a mother. You believed in the Divine Mother. They were known as Shaktas. There were Shaivas who believed God as Shiva. Then there were Vaishnavas. There were Brahmo Samajists. And there were so many other sects. And each one was asserting that his idea of God was the most correct one, and the others were wrong. So these quarrels were going on. And as you all know, Sri Ramakrishna came to harmonize all these different sects. So Sri Ramakrishna tells now Vijay Krishna Goswami, though he was a Brahmo Samaj and they believed in a formless God, Vijay Krishna Goswami is told by Sri Ramakrishna, he is explaining to him the importance of worshipping God as Mother. In what way God as Mother is a much better way to worship for most of the people, because the very idea of motherhood of God was held very dear in our Indian tradition. Because even in human relationship, we find that the relationship of a child with his or her mother is the closest among all other relationships. And whenever there is a saying that it is very difficult to get favors from your father, but the mother is always kind and compassionate. That is, almost everybody believes in that. Right from childhood, we have a tendency to go for everything whenever we are in deep trouble, to go to mother. So God as mother was always a favorite way to worship in the Indian tradition. So Sri Ramakrishna, who began his spiritual sadhana by worshipping God as the Divine Mother, Bhavatarini, he says, addressing Vijay Krishna Goswami, you prayed to God addressing him as mother and mother, mother. This is very good. They say one is attracted more by mother than by the father. Now this is Sri Ramakrishna's statement. And he is making a statement which is accepted by Vijay Krishna Goswami. But then he says something which is really wonderful. He says, you can force your mother, but you can't force your father. In those days, the society was patriarchal. So the property was normally handed over from the father to the son. Mother had very little role to play. In a society where mother is more important, in some states like Kerala and some other northeastern states, the property of the mother goes to the daughter. So their father is not so important. Whereas in most societies, most sects within Hinduism, the Hindu society itself is built on the system where the property goes from the father to the son. That was what was practiced in those days. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna is giving an example that cartfuls of money were being borrowed from the estate of Trailokya's mother with many men in red turbans. Perhaps Trailokya had lost his father. So naturally the son will claim the property which normally would be with the mother because she was the caretaker. But in the court of law, the son had a right. So that's why many men in red turbans, Sri Ramakrishna is giving that example, saying how easy it is to get the wealth from the mother than the father. So after the father's death, it was very easy for Trailokya, who literally forced the mother to part with the property. The son demanded and he got it. Trailokya was waiting on the other side of the road with his people. He forcibly took the whole treasure. Though perhaps the mother would have not given him, but still he could enforce and get that treasure. The idea is, of course, this is not to point out to any, to criticize Trailokya, but he says you can use a great deal of force when it concerns your mother's treasure. What Sri Ramakrishna wants to convey is that whatever be your attitude, if you are really keen and if you are in a hurry to get the treasure, the spiritual treasures, it is easier if you pray or request the mother than the father. You may have to practice a lot of sadhana to get access to the spiritual treasures from the father. But if you approach the mother, it is easier to get. So he is giving this example. Then he says, don't they say that a mother cannot go to law against her son? I mean, those days, if the son claimed the father's treasure, the mother normally did not interfere, or she was powerless to stop the son from getting the treasure. So in a direct way, in a very hilarious or in a very humorous way, Sri Ramakrishna is pointing out that if you worship God as mother, there are more chances that your prayer will be answered sooner. It's much easier to get all the spiritual treasures from God the mother rather than God the father. So Vijay is asking this question because they worshipped God. Of course, they did not worship God either as father or the mother. They believed in a formless God. But still he asks, if Brahman is the divine mother, if both are same, is he with form or without form? Now they believed in a God without any form. So if you say either if God is a father, then he has a form of a father. If we call God as mother, if you consider God as mother, then he will have the form of the divine mother. So he says, if Brahman, which is normally supposed to be formless, then where is the question of father or mother? Because does this Brahman, is he with form or without form? In fact, that's why we cannot even use the pronoun he or she with respect to Brahman. Brahman is always referred to as it. The Brahman is not referred to as he. Purusha, of course, they can say that it is he. When you say there are two entities, Purusha and Prakriti, we can refer to Purusha as he. But in Vedanta, Brahman is always referred to it because it is not gender specific. There's no gender because he is neither father nor mother. But here Sri Ramakrishna says the same Brahman is Kali, or the mother, the divine mother. Sri Ramakrishna then tells something very significant. He answers. He says Brahman is the same as Kali, the primal power. When inactive, I call it Brahman. When creating, preserving and dissolving, I call it Shakti or power. Still water is an illustration. Suppose you want to take an illustration, Sri Ramakrishna says, if the water of a lake is still, it is not uh, uh, in motion, and there are no waves in that lake or that pond, then that still water can be compared to Brahman. But when there are waves, when the still water is in motion, the same water is like Shakti or Kali. Kali is she who communes with Mahakala, that is Brahman. Mahakala is Brahman and Kali is the manifestation in this gross world of that same Brahman. So she is Shakti. Kali is with form and again she is without form. This is something very significant. When Kali is without form, before creation, as I told you, Brahman is one with Parama Prakriti. Prakriti, when you call Prakriti as nature, when you see the manifest nature, the nature around us, that is the manifest form of Prakriti. But there is a higher aspect of Prakriti, a higher aspect of Kali, which is formless, which is one with Brahman, and that is known as Parama Prakriti. There's not absolutely no difference because the process of creation has not started as yet. The one without a second has not become two, or at least it has not appearing to us as two. So he says, when in motion, the same water becomes, he says the same water, when in motion is known as Shakti, and when it is not moving, when it is still, it can be compared as Brahman, compared to Brahman. So he says, if you believe in the formless, then meditate on Kali as being formless. So it doesn't really mind. If you want to accept Kali, the Brahmos, they believed in God without form. Then he said, why can't you accept Kali, the Kali which does not move, which is not in motion? That Kali can be the formless Brahman. There's absolutely no difference. And if you want the Kali to be in motion, then she becomes the form, she is with form. So he says, be firm. If you believe in the formless, then meditate on Kali as being formless. Be firm in one ideal. She herself will make you understand what she really is. When you reach Shampukur, you will also know Telpada. Telpada was a small village near Shampukur. So he says, once you reach Shampukur, once you reach the formless aspect of Kali, then you will understand what Kali is with form. If you reach the lake, which is motionless, you can expect to see that same lake in motion also. But first you have to reach the lake. So he says, whether you accept God with form or you accept God without form, accept any one reality, one as reality, go towards it, experience that reality which you have, in which you have faith. You begin with faith and then let it be a matter of experience. So when you experience God as with form, that same God, that same deity or the same God with form will show what that formless God is. The other way also it is true. Totapuri, for example, he believed in a formless God, but because of the grace of Sri Ramakrishna, he could see that the same God which he believed as Brahman was the God which Sri Ramakrishna worshipped as Kali in the temple. So that distinction between the formless and the God with form was removed by Sri Ramakrishna. He is trying to show that both are same. You have to do sadhana, do spiritual practices to reach either aspect of reality. Whatever you believe in, there's no harm, but don't say the other one is wrong. People who believe in the formless God should not say the God with form. God can be with form, God can be without form. God is something more than that. You can't define God. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says. So if you go to Shampukur, you will know, because it's a neighboring village. People there will show what Telpada is. That's another village near Shampukur. So you don't have to go to know Telpada. You go to Shampukur, automatically you'll know what Telpada is or where it is. Then you will know that he is not only existence, but he also speaks to you the way I am speaking to you. Have faith. So these Brahmos, they believed that God is the supreme existence, Sat, Chit and Anand, and they thought by realizing him as eternal pure existence or pure consciousness or pure bliss, we will not be able to see him as personal God. But Sri Ramakrishna says, don't worry. If you deserve it, or if you want, you can see God as a human being talking to you, speaking to you, because it is possible for Brahman to manifest himself in any way he wants. He can come with form, he can be without form, he can give you the experience of form or a formless reality. Have faith, it will all become clear. And there is one more thing. If you believe in the formless, be firm in your belief, but don't be dogmatic. Don't emphasize that God can be only this and not that. Say, I believe in that the God is formless. You say to others, or maybe to everybody in public. They were all preachers, these Brahmos. Said there's no harm in saying that God is formless for us, and we believe in formless God and worship him. You are free to do that. But what else God is, only he knows. I do not know. You are not in the position of God to know what else he is. You accept him as God with form, you go with it. God without form, you worship him, realize him. But don't say that that is the end of your knowledge. Knowledge doesn't end there. God can be many more things. He may manifest before you as God without form, but he can be formless also. Or he can be, you may manifest as formless God, but he may be something else. He may manifest himself as Kali when he is in motion. You say, I don't know, I cannot understand. Can a person with an ounce of intelligence know the nature of God? Can one seer contain 4 seers of milk? Seers was a measure used in those days. So normally they used to say 1 seer of milk or 4 seers of milk. So he says, if the capacity of your vessel, of your brain, of your intelligence is just 1 seer, then how can you have 4 seers of milk? It is not possible. It cannot accommodate that much of knowledge. So leave everything to God, and once you realize one aspect, depending on your capacity and your faith and your belief, then if God wants, he or she or Brahman will explain to you what it's really like. But that experience is very important. It's not enough to have a theological concept of God. Theological concepts only help you to meditate or to visualize God in a particular way. But after that, you have to experience, and that experience can be something totally different from what you imagined. So intellect has its own limitations. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says, with a limited intelligence of 1 seer of intelligence, you can't expect to have 4 seers of knowledge. It is not simply possible. So if he is in his grace, grants his vision and makes one understand, then alone can one understand, otherwise not. That which is Brahman is also Shakti, the Divine Mother. Then he quotes a song, which is the original Bengali song is Mono ki tattva kore tare. That means he says, is this hint not enough? Ram Prasad, who is a great saint of Divine Mother, he refused to be drawn into argument because he had the experience of Mother, and he saw Mother in various ways. He saw her with form, without form, and he says, I can't define this Mother. So you can't guess. It is like trying to guess Mother. This is a beautiful song. I'll read out the English version of that song. Though Sri Ramakrishna has just quoted the last 2 lines. He says, it is he that I worship as Mother. The God whom I worship is my Mother. Says Ram Prasad, shall I give away this secret in the teeming marketplace? Why not guess, O mind, who that being is from the hints that have been dropped? So he says, I can at the most give you hints. I can't go and shout, talk about this reality in the marketplace. What he means is that there's a beautiful song, Manaki Tattva Karo Tare. How are you trying, O my mind? Ram Prasad seems to be telling his own mind. Most of his songs, Ram Prasad, Saint Ram Prasad, who was a great devotee of Kali, and Thakur Sri Ramakrishna used to often sing his songs and go into ecstasy because he believed that Sri Ramakrishna had an experience of the Divine Mother Kali in her various aspects. So he says, "Oh my mind, how are you trying to know the nature of God? It is like groping, you are groping like a madman locked in a dark room. First of all, the room is dark and you are not in your senses. A madman locked in a room, he is trying to grope and try to come out. He is not sensible enough to know where the door is because he is mad. And moreover, apart from his madness, the room is dark. So that is the condition of an ordinary human being. He is trying to grope or trying to grasp the reality that is Divine Mother or Ma Kali. So how can he or she, how do you know whether it is he or she? You are not seeing God. You just have a faith that it is God is either formless or with form, like a father or a mother. You take up any aspect, but don't conclude that God is only this and not that. So he says he cannot be grasped. He's telling his mind, you cannot grasp God. You cannot contemplate on God. You cannot think about God. You can just try to realize him through ecstatic love only. So that deep inner feeling, that deep inner yearning is absolutely necessary to understand truly what this God is. That is what this song is trying to convey. He is grasped through ecstatic love. How can you fathom him without it? Only through affirmation, never negation. You can you know him. Neither the Veda, nor through the Tantra, nor the six darshanas. It is in love's elixir only that he delights, O mind. He dwells in the body's inmost depths in everlasting joy. And for that love, the mighty yogis practice yoga from age to age. When that love awakens, the Lord like a magnet draws to him the soul. He it is, says Ram Prasad, which I approach as mother. That same God which you are trying to worship, which yogis are trying to meditate and find in the depths of their heart through meditation, I worship that God as through pure love, and that is the only way I could realize God as my mother, which I approach as a mother. I approach her as a mother. You may be approaching, the yogis may be approaching him as Purusha, but without love, with just an intellectual understanding of God, you can't grasp him. And trying to grasp him through our intellect, which has very limited capabilities, you are actually trying to grope in a dark room like a madman. So it is as impossible as it is for a madman to find the door to a room which is dark. He is not in his senses, moreover it is dark, so it is not possible. So the mind is also suffocated, and the mind has its own limitations and cannot understand or perceive or experience God or Ma Kali as she should be perceived. So that's why he says, but Ram Prasad says in this song towards the end, it is that mother which I don't understand through my mind, because she cannot be understood that way. I approach as mother. But must I give away the secret here in the marketplace? From the hints I have given, oh mind, guess what that being is. Now he is asking, he is leaving it open. He says, now you guess. How would you like to realize God, my mother, or the father? In any case, you should have that ecstatic love and that deep yearning, and then she herself or he herself will show what reality is, what that experience is. And then you will see the God as with form, whether it is a he or a she or both. You will see the different aspects of my mother, goddess. So that is a very beautiful song which Sri Ramakrishna used to sing. Sri Ramakrishna also sang this song when Vidyasagar, the famous scholar Vidyasagar, was asking him questions about reality, how people discuss philosophy and discussed various aspects of reality. He sang this song, and then he said, "Why do you bother and go on discussing endlessly? It is futile to discuss about God, but rather try to love Him, try to yearn to realize Him and experience Him, and that love will explain to you, give you the knowledge also." So, Ram Prasad also says, knowing now the secret that Kali is one with the highest Brahman. Now, that is the realization Ram Prasad got. I have cast off both righteousness and unrighteousness, dharma and adharma, forevermore. Now, what is the meaning of cast? Giving up unrighteousness, we understand, but why should we give up dharma? Now, Sri Ramakrishna is explaining why should we give up moral virtues. What he means is, it doesn't mean that you become immoral. Giving up adharma, we understand. Giving up immorality, or immoral behavior, immoral virtues, uh, giving the evil virtues, that is understood. Adharma or unrighteousness means engaging in unrighteous acts, which of course have to be given up. But dharma, righteousness here, according to the poet, it means duties prescribed by the scriptures. Now, what Ram Prasad is saying, that I don't have any duties because I love my mother, I love God. I don't have a formal approach to religion, like this Brahmo said, that you should get up, you should be very punctual, you should have this formal congregational worship and all those things. He's trying to point out to Vijay Krishna Goswami that the practice of religion should be as natural as a child loving its mother. The child loves the mother, it does not have a particular way of loving mother. It's very spontaneous in its love towards mother. It does not say that I should do so much sadhana, I should do japa, I should do this ritual, I should go to this place of worship, that place of worship. All these things are not necessary if the child loves the mother in a very natural way. So Sri Ramakrishna always liked that approach. So he is telling, I don't need this dharma. I don't, like other people, maybe for them it may be necessary. I just approach mother with love. I don't believe that if I offer so many pujas, if I do this ritual or that ritual, mother will be pleased. No, my relationship with mother is totally different. So he says, you have to give up adharma, definitely you have to give up unrighteous acts. But you also don't need to do the so-called dharma which make you stuck in these rituals. Very often we mistake the husk for the real grain. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says. The husk is necessary to protect the sadhaka. The husk of the rice may be necessary at a certain stage, but when you cook it, you have to remove that husk. When your love ripens, when you really love mother, then you don't require those rituals. You don't require a formal prayer and congregate. You don't have to go to certain places of worship. Just that is, you can reach a stage wherever you are, you fully surrender yourself to God, you practice the presence of God, and you are very keen to experience Him as a child wants to see the mother. It is like the child who is busy with the toys. He is happy, he wants to please the mother, but when he's tired of the toys, he just says, I want to see mother. So Sri Ramakrishna used to give that example. But as long as the child is happy with the toys, the mother lets him play. So as long as we are happy with the rituals, we go on pilgrimage, we do this, we do that, and we fear God, and then we fear as if we think that if we don't perform certain rituals, God will be angry with us, and all sorts of superstitions enter our head. And that's why Sri Ramakrishna says, feeding Brahmins, feeding this person, feeding this ritual. The whole of religion is controlled by priests or priestcraft, which uh, put so much fear or so much of hesitation in the mind of the devotee that he is not spontaneously he is not able to spontaneously worship God as his own mother. One will not follow any particular system or method to approach mother. He simply loves the mother and he simply approaches God as he would approach his own mother. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says. You don't have to be for forever be attached to it. In the beginning, it is okay to do some rituals till you get that ecstatic love of mother. But once you have love of mother, then you'll definitely experience her through that love, and then she herself will tell you whether she is a mother or she is a father or she is formless or God with form. Whether Brahman and Shakti, all these philosophies and all, they will be explained. That is what Sri Ramakrishna did. He was not educated. He did not understand or read theology, but he could worship mother and he got all his answers just by purely worshipping mother as his own mother and worshipping him with that spirit. So he could even satisfy the greatest minds of his age. He could get answers to all the gurus who came to teach him. The gurus came to teach him, but finally Totapuri, Bhairavi, Brahmani and all the wonderful teachers who taught him a lot of scriptures, he heard them definitely. He respected them, he heard his teachers. But they came with incomplete experience and they became fulfilled. Even Totapuri, the guru who taught him Advait Sadhana, who taught him Vedanta, his knowledge was incomplete. He did not accept Ma Kali and he believed that Brahman was the only reality. But thanks to Sri Ramakrishna's grace, he left that place after having accepted that the God whom he worshipped as Brahman and realized as Brahman is nothing but the Kali of the Shaktas, the Shiva of the Shaivas, the Vishnu of the Vaishnavas. So that's why he says adharma and dharma both have to be given up. Vijay says, then if we give up both, the Vijay asks a very intelligent question. He says, what remains if after one has given up both dharma and adharma? I understand giving up adharma, we give up evil, bad acts, we give up evil acts, we give up immoral practices. That I understand. Every religion emphasizes that. But if I give up rituals, then what remains? What am I supposed to do? Then Sri Ramakrishna says, then only pure love of God remains. You're not bound by certain customs, you're not bound by rituals, you're not bound by any methodology or anything. You simply enjoy the company of your mother, the presence of God through love. I said to the Divine Mother, Sri Ramakrishna says, this is how I used to pray to the Divine Mother. Here is your dharma and here is your adharma. Take them both and give me pure love. He did not even ask for dharma. Many of us would of course not pray to God for adharma or to give us evil powers and all those things. There are people of course who worship God for evil purposes, but most of us would try to please God or pray to God or do various types of worship to get some dharmic benefit. In a legitimate way, we ask for money, we ask for happiness, we ask for so many things of the world. That is very common, and we are prepared to do all sorts of rituals to gain those things in the world. But Sri Ramakrishna said, I don't want that dharma also, because I have nothing to gain. I just want pure love. So you take your adharma, take it away from me, also take away the dharma. I don't want, because I don't need anything from you. I just want to love you. Give me pure love. Then he says, here is your virtue and here is your vice. Here are the bad qualities. I surrender it to you. It is your responsibility to remove all the vices which I have. And I don't even want your virtues. I don't want to be known as a good person, or I don't want people to respect me for my qualities. I don't want that ego to ever come to me that I am a holy person, or I am this, I am that, I am a big person, I am a saint or something like that. I don't even want your virtue, nor do I want your vice. Vice of course I don't want, but I don't want your virtue as well. Take both, but give me love, pure love. Here is your knowledge and here is your ignorance. See, this is very significant. He says, Ignorance, of course, we all want to get rid of. But what he means by knowledge is, I don't want that knowledge which will make me ask for worldly things. I don't want the knowledge of the world. You take away that knowledge, give me pure love, which is nothing but pure knowledge. That pure love is pure knowledge. That's what he says. Take them both and grant me pure love for you. Just see, I did not ask for knowledge. Now, Sri Ramakrishna is explaining why he didn't ask for knowledge. All of us are asking for knowledge. All of us are supposed to ask for knowledge. We say, please remove our ignorance and give us knowledge. But that is not the knowledge which Sri Ramakrishna means here. He says, nor did I ask for worldly fame. When one has given up dharma and adharma, when that which remains is pure grace, grants his vision and made which is pure love, unalloyed love, untainted by desire, love for God that wells up unbidden out of the depths of the immortal soul. So Sri Ramakrishna says that Nishkama Bhakti, that love is without any desire. I don't love God so that he gives me certain things. I just love him for love's sake. That is what true love is. True love doesn't ask for any return. It's a pure love of a mother towards the child. The mother loves the child irrespective of whether he is good or bad. That's why Shankaracharya in his famous verse, he says there can be a there can be a kuputra, but there cannot be a kumata. That means there can be a bad son or a bad daughter, but we rarely hear of a bad mother who will hate the child. Whether he's good or bad, the mother has a unalloyed love, ahetuki bhakti or nishkama bhakti. It does not desire anything from the child. Even if the child does not do whatever the mother says, still the attachment towards the mother towards the child remains the same, of a true mother, of a mother who has that real motherly spirit or motherly love in her. She doesn't expect anything from the child. So that is what she says, unalloyed love, untainted by any desires. We don't ask anything. Sri Ramakrishna says, I don't ask mother to give me anything. I don't want virtue, I don't want adharma, I don't want dharma. I don't want anything. I don't want ignorance, neither do I want knowledge from her. I don't want this worldly fame and all those things because of this knowledge. But I just want this love. And he says that when such a thing happens, when such a love dawns upon a sadhaka, then the love for God wells up unbidden out of the depths of the immortal soul, because he is of the nature of love. Raso vai saha. Raso means he is the sweetness itself. He is the embodiment, personification of love or sweetness. When Swamiji was asked, Swami Vivekananda was asked, could you define Sri Ramakrishna in a single word? Some of his Western disciples were very keen to know with what light or with what attitude Swami Vivekananda looked upon his Guru or his Ishta, who was his all in all. So Swami Vivekananda says, I can describe him as love personified, Love personified. That means he could see Sri Ramakrishna as a personification of that pure love, which had infinite compassion without expecting any return. So that is how one should meditate on Sri Ramakrishna. When we meditate on Sri Ramakrishna, if we meditate on him as one who has no preconditions, or his grace is without any precondition, he is of the very nature of infinite love, which does not see any barrier. So that infinite love or that unconditional love, ecstatic love, automatically comes from the depths of our soul, because our soul, the Atma, Jivatma, is one with the Paramatma, but only due to ignorance, because of our ego, because of our 24 principles about which he is going to speak now, Sri Ramakrishna, we don't see the real God, who is the personification of love and who is within our own hearts. He is in the form of bliss. He is the raso vai saha. He is the form of infinite bliss. but we don't see that bliss. We just see particles of that bliss. Now and then we get a glimpse of that wonderful bliss, but we don't understand him fully because our love is not full. We love the world more than we love God. And that is why this love, if it is divided, that is why Sri Ramakrishna used to say that one has to be one-minded in this love. You can't divide your love. You can't love God, as Jesus said rightly. You can't love God and mammon at the same time. By mammon, he meant the world. If you have many things, if you have so many desires, and if you love almost everything in the gross world, then it is very difficult to understand what true love of God is. So, God is reluctant to give you true love. There is a saying that God even gives you mukti, but he doesn't give you bhakti or pure love, because that binds the Lord to the devotee. So that's why these great lovers of God, they just wanted God's love. They knew it is very difficult. God is not going to grant them unless he graces one. Unless God's grace is there, you cannot love him with the same love, as Sri Ramakrishna said so beautifully. He said, how can we, what is true love of God? He said, God can be realized if you have the force of three deep loves which you see in this world. One is the love of a miser towards his wealth, the infinite love a person who is a miser, who is greedy and who thinks of nothing but wealth, that kind of worldly love, the love which a chaste wife has for her husband, and the love of a child towards his or her mother. If you combine these three loves or these three worldly attachments, if you love God with that combined force of these three loves, of these three attachments, then you can get an idea of what that unalloyed or unconditional love is. But now our love is divided. We want so many things of the world. We have our own little attachments, little loves in this world. So that's why we can't. That's why he says, after having, he says that love spontaneously comes out from the heart. Now, the Brahmo devotee then asks another question. The Vijay Krishna Goswami's question is answered, but another Brahmo devotee asks this question: is God different from his power? Now he asked this question because Sri Ramakrishna said that Brahman is Shakti. That which is still water is Brahman, and when the water moves, it is Shakti. Then he asked this question logically, that is he different from his power? Because on one side we see the water is calm and placid in the lake. But when the water starts shaking and waves are formed in that river or the lake, then we see a different water. So are they same or are they different? So Sri Ramakrishna says, after one has attained the highest knowledge, both God and his power are realized as one and the same. It is like jewel and its the bright way it shines are the same. Its lesser are inseparable. As soon as the brilliance of a jewel comes to the mind, one thinks of the jewel. You cannot think of the shining diamond without seeing the diamond. You cannot imagine the shine, the sparkle of a diamond without imagining a diamond. So also says, just like the milk is inseparable from its whiteness. So when you see milk, the whiteness automatically comes to your mind. Milk is always white. So just as you cannot separate the quality from the real material, he says you cannot separate Shakti from Brahman. So think of one and you think of the other. But this oneness does not come about until one has attained the highest knowledge. Now it is easy to say because we can see the milk. We can see the diamond and the way it is sparkling, it is shining. But here Sri Ramakrishna says you have to see it. You have to experience God. You have to experience either Brahman or Kali to know that they are same. It theoretically you may understand. We can understand it intellectually, but that is of no use. You may say Brahman and Kali, it doesn't really make any difference. So he says, only when you get that true knowledge, that highest knowledge, then you will see the one whom I was worshipping as Brahman is nothing but Kali. So that's why he says, having this oneness does not come until one has attained the highest knowledge. Having attained the highest knowledge, one goes into samadhi and then goes beyond the 24 cosmic principles, including the ego. How one feels in samadhi cannot be described in words. Coming down a little, one can only give a hint of it. When I repeat Om, Om after samadhi, I have already come down 100 cubits. Even to repeat Om, even to repeat the mantra, you have to come down from that formless aspect of Brahman which you experience in samadhi. So you have to come in. Brahman is beyond the Vedic doctrine. One cannot speak of it. There is no I or you there. As long as the ego is there, as long as the I exists, you cannot see Brahman. Only when you come down, then you say, oh, I am repeating Om, I am meditating, I am worshipping the God. So the God with form can be realized only when you come down to 100 cubits. That's what he says. As long as there is I. Now, here Sri Ramakrishna speaks of the 24 cosmic principles. So this is worth understanding what this 24 cosmic principles, why they are known as 24 cosmic principles. Now, what happens in samadhi is that you become one with the Purusha. If you take Sankhya philosophy is a philosophy on which Vedanta is based. And here Sri Ramakrishna is referring to the 24 principles which explain the created universe according to the Sankhya. As I told you, there are two aspects of reality. One is Purusha and one is Prakriti, Brahman and Shakti. Now, Prakriti or Shakti, when it is seen as the manifest universe, it doesn't happen all of a sudden. As I told you, Parama Purusha is one with Parama Prakriti, which is not manifest. But when that Parama Prakriti becomes the universe, it has 24 principles or 24 components which make it appear like a universe. The universe that we see around us is made of 24 principles. And Sri Ramakrishna says these 24 principles you have to transcend. One of the principles is ego, and when you finally transcend that and become one with Parama Prakriti or one with Purusha, then the Maya or this world vanishes. So what is this? What are these 24 principles? So we'll see what those 24 principles are according to Sankhya. First, it is Sage Kapila, who is the founder of the Sankhya philosophy, which is the foundation of all other Indian philosophies, especially Vedanta. So in Sankhya, he says he uses a system of 24 categories. 24 tattva, they are known as tattvas. They explain the whole universe, how the universe is formed. So they say first, the Prakriti or nature herself is Parama Prakriti, how it becomes the Prakriti that we see. So she first manifests herself as the Mahat. Mahat is the cosmic principle, the great cause, the universal cause from which all this creation, the trees, the cosmos, the plants, and whole creation has come out. There should be a universal cause without which the world cannot be created. So that is known as Mahat. That is the cosmic principle number 1. So we are trying to find out what are these 24 principles. The second principle is the Prakriti, that is the Mahat, which is the great cause, gives rise to another level which is known as Buddhi or reasoning or causative intelligence. That is the light which shines in all of us. When we come down to the Vijnanamaya Kosha level, when the creation starts, then we try to, when consciousness develops in us and we see the different objects around us, how do we see these different objects? That we are seeing through the third principle. The first principle is Mahat or the great cause, then comes Buddhi, then comes Ahankara. Ahankara means ego. then each of these individuals in this great cause, in the great cause there is no ego. The great cause then breaks up into different egos, and we see ourselves as different. We see ourselves as A, B, C, D, different people. We see ourselves as trees, we see ourselves as animals, as human beings. All this is because the Mahat has gone down to a state which is known as Buddhi, that is awareness, and that awareness, when it shines through individual egos, it divides into an ego and thousands of egos, and that is what we see as the multiplicity of beings. That ego is the third principle. Now, the fourth, then that principle, that ego divides itself into manas, the manomaya kosha or the manas. The vijnanamaya kosha, it becomes manomaya kosha. The next principle is manas, the mind, which is made of 10 components, 10 subtle components. They are the 5 organs of perception: the sight, the smell, the taste. That's how we perceive the universe. We see things, we hear things, we smell things, we touch things. So the 5 sense organs, the 5 subtle sense organs help the mind to see this whole universe. The 5 organs of perception and the 5 organs of action. Gyanendriya, the 5 organs of perception, the way we get all our information, all our knowledge through these 5 organs. And the 5 organs of action, which are the tongue, the feet, the hands, and the organs of evacuation and reproduction. So these are the 5 organs through which we do our actions. So 5 actions, 5 Gyanendriyas and 5 Karmendriyas are 10. Then we have the mind above it, the Buddhi and the Mahat. So Mahat, Buddhi, Ahankara, the ego, and then the Manas and the 10 Indriyas. So we come to 14. These are the 14 principles. Now these 14 principles give rise to the material universe. The material universe also is comprised of 10 elements divided into 2 categories of 5 each. One is sound tanmatras. Tanmatras means the finer materials. They cannot be seen, but those tanmatras are, they form the matter that we see, that we sound, touch, aspect, taste and smell. So these aspects, these different tanmatras, they give rise to the created universe, which are again divided into 5. Prithvi, that is earth. Earth means solid. Water, liquid. Air, that is gaseous. Fire, that is the other 4th element. And ether, that is space. So these are the 5 tanmatras and the 5 mahabhutas. So that's why we say this, the universe that we see is made of these 5 elements. That is the Sankhya philosophy. So the 5 bhutas, the 5 tanmatras, the subtle matter, the subtle elements, 10 plus 10 Gyanendriya, 5 Karmendriyas, 5 Gyanendriyas. So altogether 20 plus the Manas, 21. Then we have the Ahankara, Buddhi and Mahat. Mahat is the universal cause. So these are the 24 principles which form part of Prakriti or Shakti. So when we are living in this world, when we perceive Shakti through these 24 elements. These 24 elements create this whole universe. And when we go back to the Purusha level, we have to transcend this Mahat and go beyond the ego. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says that you have to go beyond this 24 cosmic principle. And that is prevented at the stage of the ego. The ego is, which is the third aspect. From Mahat we came to the Buddhi, from Buddhi we came to the mind. That's why they say, as long as the ego persists, we cannot become one with that Purusha. We still retain our jivahood. We do not become free. We do not get moksha. So he says, as long as there is I, there is you also. As long as I have that ego, that I am exist, I am the physical body, I have the Annamaya Kosha, I have the Pranamaya Kosha, I have the Manomaya Kosha, I have the Vijnanamaya Kosha, all this Buddhi, this is my Buddhi, this is my Indriyas, this is my mind. So till that ego lasts, Sri Ramakrishna says, you have to take the help of Prakriti. You are in this universe, you are a part of creation, so you have to accept the personal God. You can't say God is formless. If God is formless, then the ego should go. Only when the ego goes, you see God as formless. That's why he says Shakti is necessary. Whom do we pray? We pray to Mother because we consider Mother as separate, Mother as Prakriti. We consider Mother as Prakriti, Mother as Shakti, the manifestation of Brahman, which we see in this world. So to get out of this world, we have to use all our senses, all the 24 tattvas, and progressively go beyond these tattvas and become one with Brahman. So that is the entire process through which God's grace percolates down to us. So he says, as long as there is the knowledge that I pray, I meditate, I am doing this worship, I am doing puja, I am worshipping God, I love God, that as long as Sri Ramakrishna says that I is there, as long as that ego does not go from us, he says, you get a feeling that you are praying and God is listening to your prayer. For you, God has to be a human being, or God has to be an incarnation. God has to be a mother. God has to be a father who will respond to your prayers, because who is praying? Your ego is still there. So he says, what is the harm? If you don't be a hypocrite and say that ego does not exist. When I see the world exists, when I see the ego exists, when I say I am praying, I am meditating, I am happy, I am joyful, I am sorrowful, I am sad, I am depressed. When that I is there, he says it is better to think of God as a person. You cannot help it. That's why it's better to worship a formless God. That's why he says, don't be too egotistic and think of the God as Brahman, because those are empty words. There are a lot of people who are absolutely inclined to worship God as in Ashtavakra Samhita and all the Advaitic texts. They are very good. But you should have had some experience of that egolessness, or you should be confident that you can give up the ego. Only then, that's the wonderful example with Totapuri, who was Sri Ramakrishna's guru. Sri Ramakrishna teaches him a wonderful lesson. Totapuri was supposed to be a Advaitic guru, and he did not believe in any forms, including Mother Kali. But he was worshipping his dhuni, the fire, and he used to always stay under the banyan tree in Panchavati and stay in the outside the kutia and do his worship. So one day a person comes and tries to light his pipe using that, light his tobacco using the fire of this holy fire which he had burnt. So Totapuri gets angry and he says, how dare you touch my fire, sacred fire for lighting your tobacco. So then Sri Ramakrishna laughs at Totapuri. He says, oh, you still have that ego. You think it is your fire. A person who has truly realized Brahman, he should not forget, he should not have that ego, and he should not be angry. Anger and all those things come only when you have a deep sense of ego. So he says, what is the use of your Brahma Gyan? You are still getting angry. So that shows that as long as we have that ego, as long as we have that body sense, it is always better to worship God with devotion, to worship God with bhakti. That's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. If one thinks of God as a person, till one has that ego. You are the master, I am your servant. You are the whole, I am your part. You are the mother, I am your son. This awareness, this bodha in the buddhi remains, because that ego is still there. So it's not harmful according to Sri Ramakrishna. As long as ego is there, why don't you accept that experience and accept God as a person who will show you what that formless God is. God as mother or God as father. When your love deepens, you will be shown what that formless aspect of God is. You will realize that. So that's why he says it is more practical for people who has this body consciousness to rather focus on the personal aspect of God rather than have an intellectual understanding of Advaita. So Advaita as a philosophy can be very interesting. It can satisfy rational minds. But Advaita as a practice is totally different. Advaita as a practice can be extremely difficult as long as you have the body consciousness, as long as you consider the world to be real. Totapuri, right from childhood, he was not attached to the world. He was sent to a monastery when he was absolutely a small child. He had not seen what worldliness is. He was not attached to, he had no family, he had not, absolutely nothing. He used to stay outdoors always, even in the rain. He never stayed indoors. That's the training they gave him to convince the person that it doesn't really matter what happens to your body. You should be strong enough to resist that. So that lack of body consciousness is a preliminary condition to even attempt the sadhana of Advaita Vedanta. And that's why Totapuri could follow that path. So Advaita as a practice requires a totally detached attitude. Otherwise, if Sri Ramakrishna is trying to tell these Brahmo devotees, there's no harm in worshipping God as formless, in his formless aspect. But on one side, you are attached to your wife, your children, you have a family, you have desire for wealth, name, fame, you have this ego also. And you say God is Brahman, he is formless. He says both these things can be very hypocritical. So it's better to accept God and say that you are his child. You accept the world, you accept the trouble. You go to God when you are in trouble. You go to God and pray to him to reveal his true form, and try to love him, increase your love for him. So there is a feeling of difference. I am one and you are another. This feeling of duality that God himself gives. That is why one is aware of being a male or a female, or why one feels that there is light and there is darkness and so on. As long as there is awareness of difference, one has to believe in Shakti. One has to believe in the Divine Mother, the personal God. Shakti can manifest as a male God, as a female God. It's not necessary that Shakti has to be the feminine principle only, but we call it Shakti. He himself has kept this I-ness in us. Even if you try to reason 1,000 times, this I does not leave you. As long as it exists, he manifests as a person. As long as there is this I, as long as you are conscious of duality, you cannot insist that Brahman is without attributes. It would be hypocritical to say that Brahman is without attributes. When you are seeing your own body, when you are seeing your own relatives, your own world, you are attached to that world, that ego is still there in you. How can you say that this world does not exist? You may enjoy reading Vedanta, attending this Advaita Vedanta lectures. They are wonderful. It is good to have a concept, but that will still be a dream for us. Let us not confuse dream with reality. Sri Ramakrishna, what is saying, that be pragmatic. There's no harm in dreaming about the formless God, as the Brahmos did, or as this wonderful talks on Advaita Vedanta tell us to do. Think that you are not the body, you are not the mind, you are not the ego, Mano, Buddhi, Ahankar. These are wonderful verses of Advaita Vedanta. But then to practice them, Advaita as a practice as opposed to Advaita as a theory are two different things. And when we try to practice it, then the difficulty comes, because we cannot give up the world. We still want to have our own little things. We want our small ego to be satisfied. We have idea of my son, my daughter, my mother, my father, and all the worldly relations. We want to hold on to them, and yet we want to hold on to the highest principle. So Sri Ramakrishna says, don't you think it is not pragmatic? Why don't you accept God as mother? Why don't you follow a dualistic path? And because that will lead you to the same formless Brahman. Sri Ramakrishna's devotion to Ma Kali Ma Kali sent, the mother herself sent Totapuri to teach him the highest non-dual knowledge. So non-duality as an experience, Sri Ramakrishna could experience, but at the same time, he accepted Kali. That's why he says, as long as that I is there, you must not insist that Brahman is without any attributes. He is formless. It is okay for people who are practicing Advaita as a philosophy and who have practiced that discipline, practice that detachment from society and are austere and who can lead that kind of life where they have nothing to do with the world, like Totapuri did, then they can claim that they can say Aham Brahmasmi and all those things, and they will get the result of that sadhana as Totapuri did. But that is the kind of austere life which is required. It's not easy to just watch a few videos and imagine that one is an Advaitin. It gives you a theoretical framework, but not the experience. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna says you must accept Brahman with attributes. This very Brahman with attributes has been called Kali, or the primal power in the Vedas, the Puranas, or the Tantras. Next, Vijay asked this question, but we will not discuss it. We are already late. He asks, how can we have a vision of this Shakti or this primal power? And how can we have, will that lead to the knowledge of Brahman without attributes, that formless Brahman? Now that question will be answered in the next class by Sri Ramakrishna. He says, why don't you accept mother with form, and then you will see that through her grace you can have the vision or have the experience of God without form also. You can have that Advaita experience if she wishes. So that is a very important aspect of Sri Ramakrishna's philosophy. That's why it's very important, because all these wonderful teachings we get in the gospel are not just intellectual discussions. They come from a deep experience of Sri Ramakrishna. They come from an experience where he has seen the formless God. He has, by the grace of his own mother, Divine Mother, whom he worshipped with form, and through her grace he got even a guru who taught him the highest. So whatever he wanted, even when Totapuri came and said, I'll teach you the non-dual Vedanta, Advait Vedanta, he went to mother and asked her permission. She was speaking to him. And only when he got the permission from mother through her grace, in 3 days he got the realization which Totapuri struggled for 40 years to get, that Advaitic experience, that Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So Sri Ramakrishna is telling from his own experience that once you realize God in whichever way you like, through love, through yearning, through sincerity, through Vyakulata, then you will find that all the other aspects which are necessary for you to know mother out of her, or the father or the mother, the form in which you want to worship, that form, that avatara or that personal God will show you through his or her grace. So that is now we will conclude, and if there are some questions, we can take a few questions. You just raise your hand. Yeah, Purnima is asking a question. Okay. I'm going to the gallery view. Okay. Purnima wants to ask.
Yes. I am always wondered what is this Tantra is, and how Kali comes into the picture there. And did Ramakrishna practice Tantra?
Yeah. If you have read his biography, you complete the question first.
And also the like when people talk about Tantra, I mean, we also get some people practice with not right people practicing, and bad things about. So I'm a bit always confused about that.
Tantra is, the word has been spoiled, just as yoga has been trivialized. When you say yoga, Patanjali's yoga, of course, I mean Patanjali's yoga, it is one of the highest philosophies. But what is the yoga that you see today? It is just a commercial yoga which improves your skin, improves your health, improves your body. People are stuck to the body. So because they understand yoga only as asanas, and today the whole world is celebrating the yoga day. You ask any one of them, even the so-called famous gurus, they will say yoga asanas. That is what they want from yoga. They just want a more beautiful body to have more enjoyment of this world. They never even think of the idea that you have to go beyond the body. If you have to go beyond the body, if you are practicing yoga, then asana should be just to keep you to do your sadhana, not to beautify your body or make it to enjoy more pleasures. But yoga has got a bad name. Not only bad name, it is grossly misused. So
Misunderstood.
also Tantra, so also Vedanta, so also Advait Vedanta. Advait Vedanta also can be misunderstood. People think that they are fit for Advait Vedanta. They are terribly attached to the world. Even Buddhism, for example, the so-called Buddhists, Buddha said you should get rid of desires. But there are Buddhists who marry 4 times, 5 times, and then have children and all those things. How could Buddha accept that? He says you have to get rid of desire. So the the things which we see being practiced has nothing to do with the original philosophy of Tantra. Tantra is one of the purest forms of worship where the child worships the mother as Shakti. So when you worship, a child worships mother, the relationship is absolutely pure. Don't you see that? So Sri Ramakrishna spoke of Tantra is nothing but Shakti. Shakti means the manifestation of God when Brahman becomes creation. So there is nothing unholy about Tantra. You can make anything unholy. Vedanta can be made unholy.
Yeah, because this generally understood thing is you get the misunderstanding of that, and I always
Yeah,
get
all, even everything in the name of which passes in the name of religion, 99% of the cases, it is misunderstood. If we want the pure stuff, if you want to know what pure Vedanta is, if you want to know what pure Bhakti is, if you want to know what pure Vaishnavism is, if you want to know even what pure Tantra is, then you have to go to the original source and have a guru. That is the problem. We take tantras from YouTube. We learn Vedanta also from YouTube, which is not a good media. You know, you have to go to the tradition, go to at least one who is in touch with the tradition. And even yoga, I'm talking of yoga, whether it is yoga, whether it is Tantra, whether it is Vaishnavism, you cannot get these things from Amazon and from YouTube and from the internet. Internet can be a medium, but it cannot be the authentic source. If there is somebody who can explain to you the original true import, as Sri Ramakrishna did. You see, people who came to Sri Ramakrishna, Vijay Krishna Goswami, the founder of such a big Brahmo Samaj, even he is confused. Even a person who founds a organization, such a big organization, has to be explained by Sri Ramakrishna giving some simple examples. That's why I told you, if you read the gospel, you will not only get the idea of what Vedanta is, but you'll get an idea of what Tantra is, what Bhakti is, what Vaishnavism is, what Christianity is, what Islam is. You see, most of his insights, most of the examples he gives, he points out to the highest form of religious or spiritual practice which these different sects or different paths showed, because their founders had, even the Buddhists. Buddha was the founder of Buddhism, but can we say that the Buddhism which is being practiced randomly by random people? I'm not talking of the traditional way, because every founder doesn't go away without starting an organ. Buddha started his Sangha. Now everybody does leave, these prophets leave behind a particular tradition, and they believe that this teaching is not so trivial that it can go from anybody to anybody. It has to go in a particular way. Just as I told you many times, that when we want a degree from Oxford, you can't learn it from somebody on the streets. You have to go and learn it from an Oxford professor who is part of the department, who has been there for many years and has been permitted to teach, who has been qualified. So it has to come in an Oxford tradition to become an Oxford graduate. Otherwise, just by reading a book, you can't become a Oxford graduate. I mean, you have to undergo, even if it is true in secular knowledge. That's why whether it is yoga, whether it is Tantra, it has to be taken, or you have to go to the original source. And that Sri Ramakrishna says that is also possible. You asked the question the other day also. You can go directly to Shankaracharya. You can go directly to Buddha, and till you get his vision and till you get a sanction, like Sri Ramakrishna could talk with Kali. He did not read books on Kali, he did not read tantras and then preach others. He heard it, he experienced the great truths of tantras, he experienced the great truths of Christianity, and he experienced the great truths of Buddhism and all the other different religions, sects of Hinduism also, Vedanta, and based on his experience, he is giving us advice. So that is also possible. Though he had a lot of gurus who came, but in the beginning, his first realization was by his deep yearning and love of his mother, Mother Kali, whom he called as Bhavatarini. So that is possible. So there are two ways: either you follow a tradition, and somebody who follows the tradition after ascertaining that they are part of the tradition, or you go directly to the source. Whereas it is not a good idea to understand intellectually most of these things either through the internet or through published books without confirming the source of that book. I mean, if Vivekananda writes a book, he is part of a tradition. But if XYZ writes, maybe it is similar to what Vivekananda has written. He might have compiled from different sources, but it does not carry that same weight. So there is no substitute for we cannot have any substitute for true experience. So Vedanta is an experience, Tantra is an experience, Buddhism is an experience, Yoga is an experience, as propounded by the founders, is a totally rare and a difficult thing, and a totally different thing than what it is perceived. So am I clear?
Yes, our only thing is, like, I had read that Ramakrishna followed Tantra, but always I had in negative.
No, he followed all paths. See, he practiced, he started his spiritual life with a deep yearning towards mother. Now God can be worshipped as mother in the Shakta Tantras and also Vaishnava Tantras also. There is not only Shakta, there is another thing known as Vaishnava Tantra. Vaishnavas also worship the feminine aspect of creation. So it is just, when you say Shakti worshipper, you worship the feminine principle in creation. And when you say a Shaiva, he worships the Purusha or the Shiva aspect of creation. Shiva and Shakti are not different. That is what Sri Ramakrishna is trying to explain to us. Whether you accept God with form, God without form, if you accept God with form, whether you accept him as a Purusha or a Prakriti or a male principle or a female principle, as father or as a mother, it doesn't really make any difference if you are sincere. And it is the sincerity which, that's why Sri Ramakrishna practiced everything. Don't think he practiced Tantra only. He practiced 64 types of Tantras. In Tantras, there are 64 different paths. And Bhairavi Brahmani, if you read his biography, it will be very clear. It's very, very important to read the Great Master along with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The Great Master is his authentic biography. Without reading that, it is very difficult to understand the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, because there in Swami Sharadanandji explains in great detail all the different types of sadhanas he practiced in his 49 years, of his life. And he realized God through all these different paths, which is unique in the history of the world. It is difficult even to realize God in one aspect, as Shakti or as Ma Kali or as Krishna or as Rama or as he has experienced. I mean, every guru came and taught him a different mode of worship. And he was so intense in his practice that he got the results far quicker than any other sadhaka. So you can't say that he was just a follower of Tantra. He was a Advaitin, he was a Advait Vedantin. He has Totapuri as his guru. He followed Shankaracharya, he followed the principles of Buddha, he followed the principles of Jesus Christ. You name any religion and he has commented upon that. Okay?
And Durgi and Lalita, they are all same, isn't
You see, these are different aspects of Shakti. So
it?
within Shakti also, Shakti worship has been practiced in thousands, and I told you there are 64 tantras. Apart from that, there are different ways. Every day India is famous in manufacturing different goddesses. So one goddess is not enough. There is Kali, there are so many Shaktis. If you take the Chandi, you will find the Devi Mahatmya. There are so many aspects of the same mother. One is the destructive aspect, Chamunda is there. You name, you will find so many choices and varieties. So Sri Krishna doesn't bother about that. He says, don't worry, let there be as many gods as possible. Be sincere in your own path and you will reach the goal. If you worship Chamunda, if you worship Krishna, if you worship Buddha, if you worship Jesus, if you are sincere, you will go to the same goal, or you will have the same experience of God. Maybe your experience at a lower level will differ. You will see Kali, somebody may see Mother, somebody may see Krishna, somebody may say Christ. The experience at the lower levels or at the personal God levels may be different. But the final experience, which is oneness, which is Sat, Chit and Ananda, that experience, which is beyond the Vedas, beyond the Bible, beyond the Quran. It is something which is beyond all explanations. It is beyond the mind, beyond the ego. That is what Sri Krishna said. When you go to that state, then you can say it is all one. Till then, this distinction will be there. Okay? So there is no problem. You worship him anyway, but the sincerity is very important. And the tradition. Sincerity is one aspect, but even before sincerity, you have to somehow go to the source. You have to go to the authentic source of that tradition. If you worship Buddhism, according to Buddhism or any sect of Buddhism, try to find out what did Buddha say. See, if you want to be a Christian, first you have to find out what Jesus Christ actually said. Not what the theologians say, or not what the Pope says, or not what the Guru says, or somebody else says. These things may help you, but you have to go back to the source. That's why when Swami Vivekananda was asked which sect is, he was telling all the Indians, go back to the Vedas. Because according to us, the Vedas are the eternal truths which were first expressed in the Indian tradition. And from Vedas, these tantras have come, yoga has come, all the philosophies which you see. So you can benefit a lot, if we can benefit a lot if we go back to the original Vedas. Or by going back to the Vedas doesn't mean that you have to read the Rig Veda. You have to go back to the spirit of the Vedas. And to understand that, you have
I'm
to, yeah.
to read Vedas.
Not read. See, I told you again, reading will give you intellectual knowledge. Reading Vedas, reading Buddhism, reading anything. What do you mean by reading Vedas? Now, if you take a Vedic text, first of all, you have to understand Sanskrit. First of all, you want an interpretation. So you have to go to a tradition anyway. You can't just simply learn Vedas from the internet. You will get Vedas on the internet. You will get tantras on the internet. Everything is there. And you will get lot of commentaries by lot of fools who have commented without having experienced. And that is the danger. Now, if you read something about Buddhism written by somebody who has not got the experience of Buddha, you are likely to make a mistake. Because you will be reading what Mr. ABC has written about Buddha, not about what Buddha himself has said. So to understand that, either you have to go back to the traditional Pali or the people who can really teach you the essential of Buddhism, and more important than that, you have to go to study a Buddhist text from a person who is practicing Buddhism, not just talking about Buddhism. That is a essential difference. When you talk of Ramakrishna and you practice what he preaches, it is totally different than what is. We can read hundreds of books, but that will not make our knowledge complete. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says it is one thing to see milk, another thing to drink milk, and a totally different thing to digest milk. Some people have just heard about milk. Some people have seen milk, but they have not tasted it. But the people who have heard about milk and comment on it is what we normally get in the market. They have heard about milk and they go on writing books on milk and its properties. They have never tasted the milk nor digested it, and they still go on writing books. And people read those books and try to follow them. That is what is happening in religion. You follow yoga, you follow tantras, you follow Vedas without knowing what it is. So I'll answer some other questions. There's one more, Arijit. Yes. Yes. Arijit can ask. Yes.
Swamiji, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I've got a couple of questions.
Yes.
I'll ask the first one, and if there is time, then I'll ask the second one.
Okay.
The first question is regarding Kathamrita.
Yes.
We know that the English translation of Kathamrita was done by Swami Nikhilananda, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that is the New York edition. There are many editions. New York is the edition which was published first in New York in say 42. I'm not very sure, but it was published. There are many other translations. Swami Abhedananji also has done. Master Masha himself brought out a small English version, but those are abridged books. Nikhilananji more or less translated the whole Kathamrut, but he has removed a lot of portions in the sense because they were not relevant, or maybe that was typical Bengali things, which a Western audience or a general person living outside Bengal may not understand. But if you want a literal translation, it has been done in 5 volumes by a trust known as Sri Math Trust, which was founded by a disciple of the chronicler of the gospel himself, M. Master Masha's disciple started a trust in Chandigarh. So they took up the Bengali word by word and translated into 5 volumes. So that is another translation which we are following now. We are following the translation into English, which is not Nikhilananda's. Nikhilananda's translation is good, no doubt, because it gives all the conversations in chronological form, whereas this 5-volume edition is not chronological. So you can follow both, but we are following the 5-volume edition, which I feel is more accurate and does not leave out all the details. There are so many details which M gives, the people who are present and all those things. So some of those things have been shortened or edited because Nikhilanji felt that they are not so relevant for the Western audience. So
right.
That is what.
Right. My question was more around, I stumbled upon another edition which is done by Swami Abhedananda.
Yes, but he didn't do the full one. Yes. He has
so it was an abridged version. It was a very condensed form.
Yes, it is a very abridged version. When he came to the West, to America, he thought he should translate because the gospel was not available. Nikhilanji's edition came much later. So he was the first one to do it. There was an abridged edition which Master Masha himself did in 1911. He published it from Chennai Math, from Madras Math, as it was known in those days. But they were selected conversations. The whole gospel was, I think, translated for the first time by Nikhilananji in 1942. That is known as the famous New York edition in English. And then, of course, it was published all over the world. In India also it was available. But then there is one more edition which has been published in America, which is this 5-volume edition. So now people think that the Bengali original, which is which was published by Master Masha himself before he died, he gave the last volume to the press, though he did not see the printed version, but he had finished all the proofs and given the 5th volume. And they say there was some material left which he could have brought one more volume, but unfortunately he died. But these 5 volumes were published just before he died. So they are the very authentic sources. Those who know Bengali, they would prefer to read that 5-volume edition. Now, of course, Udbodhan has taken those 5 volumes and rearranged it in a date-wise chronological way. So that is also a very authentic Akhanda or 1 volume edition. There are 2 volume editions. The 1 volume has been divided into 2, so it's convenient to carry. So that has been published in Bengali by Udbodhan. But the most authentic edition is, of course, authentic means most literal translation is the Chandigarh translation. That's what I feel.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
I have another question, but I'll let others ask. If there is time, then I'll ask.
Ajay wants to ask. Okay.
Maharaj?
Yes. Please continue. I can hear you. Can you please?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Yes.
You said that the role of mother and father in the spiritual teaching to the children. I didn't quite understand that.
No, not for what Sri Ramakrishna is saying.
Yeah.
He gave the example of that law case, Trailokya's father. Now, if he had gone to the court in those days, the son had a right to the property. In that context only I said. So there he says it is easier for it. He gave a very crude example, but it is true. It was true. In those days, Trailokya literally grabbed the property from his mother because his father had died. So Sri Ramakrishna is referring to that in a very light way, of course. But what he meant was, point he wanted to convey was that Trailokya could simply go to the court and get the money from the mother. And the court did not interfere because what he wanted to convey was that mother is very liberal. You can pray to mother and even get your way. Suppose you want to realize God. So worshipping God as father, according to Sri Ramakrishna, I'm saying, what the topic of today's conversation, he wanted to convince that the relationship between a child and the mother, very often, there are exceptions, of course, where the father is more loving than the mother. But most of the cases, it is believed that mother's love, because she has given birth to the child, is slightly more than that of the father. So Sri Ramakrishna's idea is, it is a very natural way for people who believe that God is either their mother or father. And he's telling Vijay Krishna Goswami, if you worship God as mother, he was very happy that Vijay Krishna Goswami referred to God as Ma. Not as, of course, he does not that father will not respond, but he felt that God as mother is psychologically for a sadhaka is more convenient, and that relationship is more convenient for spiritual progress than God as father. And this has been a topic of discussion because most religions, they accept God as the father in heaven. They don't accept God as mother. Most of the traditions. This is a unique concept to India, and Shakti worship became popular because of that. We always believed that that is our tradition. So mother comes first and father. Maybe you feel that it is according to the Western tradition, it is, the gender inequality may strike you. But it is a psychological thing which Sri Ramakrishna is accepting. So what is your question then?
Because I think you have answered my question, in terms of, because I probably didn't understand completely.
Yeah.
Another question, Maharaj, may I ask? Yeah.
Yes.
Is not related to today's talk, but it's a kind of a general question. Is in terms of universal morality. Okay. With so many things going around these days, does it depend on time? Past, present, and future, or is it objective or subjective?
Yes, it is both. You see, it is more subjective in the sense, morality, according to Swamiji, you cannot define morality on utilitarian terms. Because you see, what is good for you may be bad for somebody else, isn't it? So good and bad are always relative, according to Swamiji. Now, what is nationalism for you may be anti-national for somebody else. So you can't expect that your loyalty to your nation may come in the way of somebody's loyalty to his nation. So for him, loyalty to his own nation is his morality. Loyalty to your own nation may be your morality at your stage of life. But Sri Ramakrishna or Swamiji, rather than in the West, this question was asked because the problem of good and evil is always a very peculiar problem. You cannot solve it. That's why our religion says you have to transcend both good and evil. That's what you saw, na? Sri Ramakrishna says, you take away the evil, you take away the sin, you take away the good thing also. I don't want to be known as a good man also because I'm tired of this play. I don't want to be called, definitely I don't want to be known as a bad man or an evil man. But even that ego that I am a better person than other, I am good, other is bad. Now, for if you are eating some animal food, for you, it may be good for you, it may be tasty for you, but for the fish, it is subjective, na? It doesn't like to end up in your stomach. But we eat, even for plants. Why just fish? Anything you take in this universe, it is the good and bad is subjective. Definitely, in a way, it is subjective because however much you may say that eating this vegetable is good or eating this food is good, eating eggs are good, but you ask the egg or you ask the chicken, it is not good for them because it will die. So there is no absolute morality or absolute, everything is relative. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says, I told the mother, you take away both dharma and adharma. Dharma is good as long as you are fighting adharma. Arjuna was told to fight, Krishna told him, you fight adharma. But then he said, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Giving up all dharma and adharma, you surrender to me. So that is the final answer. So the problem of good and evil has been attempted right from day one. The Vedic rishis also attempted, but finally Indians found that there is no solution to this problem of good and evil in the world. Everything is relative. So we have to give up the relative, and the only way is through mukti or freedom from bondage of this gross existence. As long as you are gross, the problem of evil and good will not be solved. It cannot be solved because what is good for you is bad for somebody else. If you become rich, somebody else becomes poor. It is at the cost of somebody else. You can't expect total equality in this world. That's what most of the communists try to do. They believe a world, time will come when everybody will be equally happy. But Swamiji says it will never happen. It cannot happen. That is the nature of the gross world. So it will never happen. So it is better not to go into that discussion because it is entirely more subjective than objective. You cannot say what is objectively good because the subjective side of reality is very important. What is subjectively good to you may be subjectively bad for the other. Though objectively it may be neutral, isn't it? Objectively, you may think in a different way, but subjectively you will find that what you think is good for you may be really bad for the other person if it is viewed subjectively. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Maharaj, something else, but no question. Before you leave, if you can mute us all so that you can give our pranam to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Mute or unmute?
Sorry, unmute all of us before you leave every day so that we can say our pranam to you.
But how can I unmute all? You have to unmute yourself.
We can't
I have unmuted all.
All right, okay. All right.
Okay, anyway. Acha, Jai wants to ask one question. Wait. Unmute. Okay, ask.
Yeah. Maharaj, pranam.
Yes.
I have a general question. In the last 4 months after this lockdown,
Yes.
it is found. I have heard from my friends, and it is a international phenomena that people are feeling very lonely and then feeling very distressed, and they are feeling very low everywhere. This is what some people are saying, especially those who love to speak with each other, those who are not introvert, but extrovert people are like are kind of these. And also some terrorist kind of attack happened today also in Reading, and I have seen somewhere possibly where it says that this attack may also be due to loneliness, etc. So, but these kind of things may come again in future, this kind of lockdown, etc. So how in general people can help himself to handle this kind of issues through the dharma?
Only, say, it's not just because of lockdown. In fact, in UK, there is a ministry for loneliness. Do you know that? There is a full-time minister who looks after the issues of loneliness in old people. So it's not a purely lockdown phenomena. Of course, because of lockdown, it must have increased for people who are normally active. But loneliness is a very major problem all over the world, especially in the Western world, where or Western, or you can say even in India it is there. So loneliness is a problem because of the wrong attitude we have towards life. If you are more and more involved in the gross world, I mean, objects of the world. So the moment those objects are taken away from you, or the moment the gross world is not accessible to you, you feel lonely. Loneliness is not, you never feel lonely if you are happy within yourself, if you are happy with what you have. Suppose you have contentment, you are not, you don't want, I mean, you don't have a lot of desires, then you are content with whatever you have. You try to make the most of your life. So loneliness is a problem only to a person who, because of his excessive desires or excessive, I mean, you can say, attachment to the things of the world, gross world, which is missing. During lockdown, he is missing. He cannot travel, he cannot go out, he simply cannot go wherever he wants, in whichever way he wants to interact. He can't do it. He has to either interact through media if he is not conversant with media, or if he acting or interacting through another person through media is totally different. So the more gross we are, the more attached we are, the more loneliness we feel. If we have trained our children, if we have trained ourselves or trained our children to make them feel comfortable when they are alone, loneliness and aloneness are totally different. Solitude and loneliness are totally different things. One is forced, another is voluntary. So voluntary, when you are alone, it is known as solitude. When you are forced to be alone, then it is loneliness. So there is a huge difference. If you are forced to do certain things against your wish, you like to be social, you like to mix, and those are the bad habits which perhaps we should not have encouraged, and we should not encourage. There are some people who even asked me that they, not only during lockdown but even otherwise, that they, because of old age, they are losing their memory, they are not able to remember the names of their grandson, and so it is, they, according to them, it is a great problem. I said, why should there be a problem if you don't remember? The less you remember, the better, because you can focus on the goal of your life. Why should you remember everybody in the world? Why should you try to get knowledge of all the bad things that are going on in the world? If you just open the news, you can see what is going on in China, what is going on here, what is going on there. As it is, Jesus said, sufficient unto the day the evil thereof. So you have your own problems, and why should we add others' problems to your Bertrand Russell, I think someone once said that, why do you put all the garbage of others into your brain? Your brain is full of garbage anyway. We have struggling with our own problems. Then we get involved in others' problems, put those problems also inside us. And then we make our mind restless. And such a restless mind, when it is suddenly asked to sit alone, all those things come, and they find loneliness a big problem. If their mind was placid, if their mind was happy with solitude, then they would have in fact enjoyed. You see, many people told me that because of this, they are forced to work from home. They are enjoying actually. They don't have to struggle to go on tube. They don't have to, they don't get tired easily. They sit at home, do their work, the same hours, 8 hours they work. And rest of the time they can read so many wonderful things. So for many, it is a blessing in disguise. Loneliness is not a problem for all. It is a problem only for those who are having too much, that desire to socialize. Along with, see, mixing, empathetically mixing and helping others is a different thing. We have to teach children that. But we have to always teach the children also to spend some of their time in Nirjanvas, quietly, in solitude, and learn to live to himself for some part of the day. It's not good to be always social, Some part of the day you should spend for yourself, for your subjective growth, for your introspection. That is very much essential. That is missing from our syllabus, missing from our training which parents give. That parenting, we rather tend to keep the child busy by giving him a remote and make him busy all the while. And if the child sits quietly and listens to music or just closes his eyes, we think there is something wrong. Why is he quiet? Why is he not talking too much? Why should he talk? If a person prefers to sit quiet and he likes not to be disturbed, then why don't you give him that luxury? How many people can do it? But the moment you see that you are fond of gossip, you make the other person gossip against his will. So that training is never given to us.
But Maharaj, what about the adults? You were talking
adults
about
only. What you learn in childhood goes to the adults.
Yes, but who are now grown up adult? Those people are very disturbed somewhere.
That is because they were wrong. I mean, their parents.
So how do they handle themselves now?
Now, see, it is a question of habit. To change the habit now, as Sri Ramakrishna said, when the bird is young, you can train the bird. But if it cannot change its voice later on. It can be molded when it is young. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say that the younger we start in life, when we are young, and we mold ourselves, train ourselves, that is what scriptures tell us. Religion is meant to train how to live in solitude or live to yourself, become Atma Rama. Atma Rama means one who is happy in his own self. He doesn't require anybody to make him happy. Now, just to live to yourself is a great art. Just to, live. If suppose you have nothing to do, why should you be upset? You can live to yourself. You can repeat the name of God. You can read some good things. Why should you always impose yourself on others? We really, many times people don't want our company. Still we force them to have our company. We don't realize that. Many people who socialize, many people feel that why this headache has come at this moment. They come as guests. But we think we are doing them a great favor by going to their places. But sometimes they want privacy and they want to be left to themselves. As it is, they don't get time. But then because of social manners, social etiquette and all, we have to, what will he feel, what will she feel and all those things. So society has been not trained to understand the priorities of our life. What is our priority? To live a balanced life, to live a harmonious life. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says, if you want to be spiritual, you have to maje nirjan vas korte hobe. You have to go into solitude now and then. He's telling this to busy people, to see that, to ensure that this being busy does not become an addiction. Everybody feels that he should be busy. Why should you be busy? Why can't you be enjoy leisure now and then? Having nothing to do for some part of your life is also a great joy, because you can think about yourself. You can think about the higher realities. When the water is disturbed, you can't see the bottom of the lake. So meditation, keeping quiet, keeping controlling the mind, these things we don't teach ourselves, or we are not taught in childhood, and that habit is very difficult to change. It can go through habit only. So you change the habits, you will find loneliness is not a problem.
Yes, Maharaj, I have a related question. Sorry, 1 minute.
Yes.
So, so it is very related. Nowadays, youngsters of different countries, in different countries, they form different international or personal national political views, and then they support those views in the social media, and then they start quarreling with somebody who has a different view, and then they feel depressed. So is the solution also the same? Just come out from that?
Yeah. Everything, wherever there is interaction, which is not necessary for your profession or your career, which is not necessary for your livelihood, that should be avoided. That is a general rule. What does not concern you, why should you bother yourself about that? If somebody does something somewhere, why should it affect you? You first, because first of all, we don't have time for our own spiritual development, our moral development, or whatever development we intend to do. And then why should we invite problems of others and think over them, argue over them? It is just a pastime which proves to be very harmful in the long run. So if we are happy with our own problems, our problems are, that's why Jesus said, I told you, sufficient unto the day, the evil thereof. This day itself has given, this lot of evil is there today, which I have to solve. And why should I invite evil of the future and evil of the past? Why should I spend my time fretting and fuming about those things? I have enough problems in the present, isn't it? Every one of us has some problem or the other. Nobody can say he has no problems at all. So why can't we focus on them and live in the present rather than invite others' problems, interfere in other people? That's why Vanaprastha, I told you many times, that at a certain age at least we should put a break to all these things. Why should we get involved in even our own relatives, I'm saying. Vanaprastha, why were our society provided for such a system? They knew that life is short. So at the age of 50 or so, even earlier, maybe that if that is the retirement age, or even there's no strict rule as such. But at a certain age, you are supposed to reduce your interactions. Vanaprastha means not go to the forest, but create a forest-like atmosphere in your own home or in your own mind. And lessen your interactions with your relatives and friends, who anyway they don't need. I'm not saying you don't help them when they are in need, but when they don't need it, just for the heck of it, one should not get involved in too many things. What's the purpose of Vanaprastha? Is to make oneself more contemplative, get used to loneliness slowly, gradually, so that he can focus on the higher aspects of life, which are possible only in a calm mind, a mind which is not troubled by troubles. Either self-imposed, our own troubles and others' troubles also. Our own troubles are enough headache for us. Why should we invite others' troubles and think over them and create more troubles for ourselves? That's the idea. That is what renunciation and detachment is all about. Why does Gita, the whole of Gita is nothing but a lesson in detachment. How to just do your swadharma and not get involved, attached to all the other things. If you do that, loneliness and all the other worldly problems can be handled. That is, there is only one way. There are no two ways in this. Whether you take Gita, whether you take Bible, take any spiritual text, everything will tell you the same thing. You have to handle your own self. You have to learn, and you have to raise your own self by the self. So for that you require loneliness, you require some quiet time, some peace you want. So how can it be there if you are busy all the time? Okay, so we'll end today. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.